The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Riverside Estate, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods in Portland. Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow as he trimmed the hedges outside the Sterling mansion, his hands moving with practiced precision. At 19, he'd been working as a gardener's assistant for 3 years, helping his mother Diane make ends meet after his father's death. Diane had worked for the Sterlings for over a decade as the head housekeeper, a position she took immense pride in. The job paid well enough to cover Marcus's community college tuition and keep their small apartment across town. But lately, Marcus had noticed the tension in his mother's shoulders, the way she'd come home silent and exhausted, her usual warmth dimmed. The reason had a name, Vivian Sterling. Vivian was the new Mrs. Sterling, having married the elderly Theodore Sterling just 8 months ago. At 42, she was his third wife, and unlike the previous Mrs. Sterlings, who had treated Diane with respect, Vivian ruled the household with calculated cruelty disguised as perfectionism. "You call this clean?" Vivian's shrill voice echoed through the open French doors that morning. Marcus looked up from the rose bushes to see his mother standing in the kitchen, her head bowed as Vivian held up a wine glass to the light. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling. I'll rewash them all. You'll do more than that. You'll polish every piece of crystal in this house by tonight, or you can find somewhere else to work." Vivian's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the marble countertop. "I don't know why Theodore insists on keeping you. There are younger, more competent housekeepers who would kill for this position." Marcus clenched his jaw, fighting the urge to storm inside. His mother had warned him never to interfere, no matter what he heard. The Sterlings paid too well, and jobs like this were hard to find, but over the following weeks, Vivian's treatment escalated from criticism to outright abuse. She began inventing infractions. A curtain hung slightly crooked, a bathroom mirror with an invisible smudge, flowers arranged in the wrong vase. Each imagined mistake came with verbal lashings delivered in front of the other staff members, the cook, the driver, the pool maintenance man, designed to humiliate. "Your mother is incompetent," Vivian announced to Marcus one afternoon when he came inside for water. She stood in the foyer in a white linen suit, her arms crossed. "I found dust on the banister this morning. What kind of housekeeper allows dust in a home like this?" "Mom works harder than anyone I know," Marcus said quietly, his hands gripping the water bottle. "Maybe if you gave her reasonable expectations." "Excuse me." Vivian's eyes narrowed. "Are you speaking back to me? In my own home?" "I'm just saying my mother does everything you ask. She stays late, comes in early, get out. Now. Before I have Charles throw you off the property." She pointed toward the door. "And tell your mother if her son can't show respect, perhaps neither of you belongs here." Marcus left, but the seed of protectiveness had been planted. He began paying closer attention, documenting the impossible tasks, the contradictory orders, the way Vivian would inspect Diane's work with a magnifying glass looking for any excuse to berate her. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in late September. Marcus was replanting the autumn flower beds when he heard shouting. He ran toward the house to find his mother on the back terrace, tears streaming down her face, while Vivian stood over her holding a broken ceramic vase. "You destroyed a priceless family heirloom," Vivian screamed. "This vase has been in Theodore's family for 4 generations. Please, Mrs. Sterling, I didn't touch it. I was upstairs making the beds, liar. I saw you near the mantel this morning. You're a clumsy, careless woman, and I want you out of this house immediately." Please," Diane sobbed, her voice cracking. "I need this job. My son's tuition is due, our rent, that's not my problem. You should have thought about that before you broke irreplaceable property." Vivian pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Theodore right now. He may have a soft spot for you, but when he hears about this, even he won't be able to protect you." Marcus couldn't stay silent any longer. He ran up the terrace steps, positioning himself between Vivian and his mother. "She didn't break anything," he said, his voice shaking with anger and fear. "You're making this up, just like you make up everything else." Vivian's face transformed into a mask of cold fury. "How dare you accuse me of lying? Charles." She called toward the house. "Call the police. Tell them we have an aggressive trespasser making threats." "No, please." Diane grabbed Marcus's arm, her fingers digging in desperately. "Marcus, stop. You're making it worse. Please stop." Marcus begged, tears now flowing down his own face as he saw his mother's fear. "We'll leave. We'll go. Just please don't call the police. Please." His voice broke on the last word, the sound of a young man watching his mother's livelihood, their entire world, crumble because of one woman's cruelty. Vivian smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. "Too late. You threatened me in my own home. There will be consequences." But before Charles could dial, a silver Mercedes pulled into the circular driveway. Theodore Sterling emerged, his tall frame still imposing despite his 73 years. He walked with the confidence of a man who'd built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing, who'd never forgotten his own humble beginnings as a factory worker's son. Theodore. Vivian's voice immediately softened, her whole demeanor shifting. Thank God you're home. There's been a terrible incident. Diane destroyed your grandmother's vase, and then her son became violent when I tried to address it. Theodore's steel-grey eyes moved from his wife to Diane's tear-stained face to Marcus, still positioned protectively in front of his mother. Is that so? He said quietly. Diane, is this true? Before Diane could answer, Theodore held up his hand. Actually, wait. He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times. Let me check something first. Vivian's confident expression flickered for just a moment. Theodore turned the phone around, showing a video feed. I had security cameras installed throughout the house last month. You said they were for protection, remember, Vivian? I pulled up this morning's footage on my drive back from the office. The color drained from Vivian's face. This video, Theodore continued, his voice hardening, shows you entering the sitting room at 9:47 a.m. when Diane was upstairs. It shows you deliberately knocking my grandmother's vase onto the floor. Then it shows you hiding the pieces behind the curtain until you could stage this little scene this afternoon. The silence that followed was deafening. Theodore, I can explain, Vivian started. It also shows, he continued, the 15 other incidents over the past 3 weeks where you've sabotaged Diane's work. Moving furniture she'd just dusted so you could claim she missed spots. Rubbing dirt on windows she'd cleaned. Taking perfectly folded linens and crumpling them. Marcus watched his mother's face transform from terror to shock to a dawning, painful comprehension. Why would you do this? Diane whispered. Theodore answered for Vivian. Because I mentioned in passing 6 weeks ago that I was updating my will to include substantial bonuses for long-term staff members. Diane, you would have received $100,000 for your 10 years of loyal service, along with a guaranteed position for life. My wife, it seems, took issue with that. Vivian's mask finally cracked. That's my money. I'm your wife. Some housekeeper doesn't deserve, that's enough. Theodore's voice cut through her protests like ice. We had a prenuptial agreement, Vivian. A generous one, I might add. But that clearly wasn't enough for you. He turned to Diane and Marcus, his expression softening. I apologize, both of you. I should have seen what was happening sooner. I should have protected you better. Mr. Sterling, you don't need to, Diane began. Yes, I do. He looked at his wife with undisguised contempt. Vivian, pack your things. My attorney will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. The prenup has a clause about conduct unbecoming of your position. I'd say this qualifies. You can't throw me out. Vivian shrieked, her composure completely shattered now. I'm your wife. Not for much longer. Theodore turned back to Diane. I'm tripling your salary, effective immediately. And Marcus, he looked at the young man who still stood protectively beside his mother. I understand you're studying business at Portland Community College. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. How would you feel about a full scholarship to Oregon State University? I have some influence with their admissions board. And an internship at Sterling Pharmaceuticals next summer, if you're interested. Sir, we can't accept, Marcus stammered. You can, and you will. Consider it payment for 10 years of my wife, my former wife, taking advantage of your mother's kindness, and my own blindness. Theodore placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. Your mother once told me you want to help people, maybe become a doctor or researcher. The world needs more people like you, son. People who stand up for what's right, even when it costs them something. Tears flowed freely down Marcus's face now, but they were different tears. Relief. Gratitude. The overwhelming weight of fear finally lifting. That evening, after Vivian had been escorted from the property by building security, Theodore sat with Diane and Marcus in the kitchen over coffee. I grew up poor, he told them, stirring sugar into his cup. My mother cleaned houses just like you, Diane. I watched people treat her like she was invisible, like her work didn't matter, because it was service work. I swore when I made something of myself, I'd never forget where I came from. He looked at Marcus. What you did today, standing up for your mother despite the risk, that's the kind of character that can't be taught in any university. Don't ever lose that. 3 months later, Marcus walked across the stage at Portland Community College, accepting his associate degree with honors. In the audience, his mother sat beside Theodore Sterling, who had become an unexpected mentor and friend. The graduation party was held at the Sterling mansion, which felt different now, warmer, filled with laughter instead of tension. Theodore's children from his first marriage attended, along with all the household staff, treated not as employees, but as honored guests. To new beginnings, Theodore toasted, raising his glass. And to remembering that how we treat those who can do nothing for us defines who we truly are. Marcus looked at his mother, saw the peace in her eyes that had been absent for so long, and raised his own glass. The next fall, he started at Oregon State University with a full scholarship. He went on to medical school, then joined Sterling Pharmaceuticals' research division, where he led groundbreaking work developing affordable treatments for low-income patients. He never forgot the day his mother cried on the terrace, or the way his own voice broke when he begged Vivian to stop. But he also never forgot what came after, how one man's integrity changed the trajectory of their lives, and years later, when Marcus had his own company and his own employees, he treated every single one of them with the dignity his mother deserved but didn't always receive. He understood, viscerally, that a person's worth isn't measured by their position, but by their character. The lesson Theodore Sterling taught him that September afternoon became the foundation of everything Marcus built. Stand up for those who cannot stand up for themselves. Treat people with dignity regardless of their station. And never, ever forget where you came from, because in the end, that's what separates the Vivians of the world from people like Theodore, not wealth or status, but the recognition that every person, regardless of their job or circumstances, deserves respect. And sometimes, Marcus would tell his own children years later, the smallest acts of courage, like a son defending his mother, or an employer choosing justice over convenience, can ripple outward in ways we never imagine, changing not just individual lives, but the very fabric of who we become.